I tried beating Terraria, but every enemy is a worm. That is correct. From a simple slime all the way to the Moonlord himself, every single thing in Terraria is a long boy. I started off by spawning into my long Terraria world. No pee-pee jokes here, boys. I opened up my starter bag, used up all of my mana crystals, all of my life crystals, and then I proceeded to chop down some wood. This is where I had encountered my very first enemy, the green slime. And yes, it worked exactly like any other worm boss. It had various different segments that you could hit, but the thing is it wouldn't break into segments like the Eater of the World, right? So as you can see from the slime, every single enemy will have multiple hitboxes, but at the same time, it can deal damage to us in multiple ways, making the mod easier in some sense and harder in others. I continued defeating slimes, then I went over to the left side of the world where I discovered a vulture that looked completely contorted, so, you know, I defeated it. And then I found another chest where I looted some great items, and then I proceeded further over to the jungle. This is where I got attacked by a massive jungle bat that was longer than the own thing in my pants that I have. I know. Sometimes life is unforgiving. I ventured further down into the jungle, got myself some cool items from a golden chest, and then I teleported back home. I got trapped outside of my own house, so I had to dig through my home. Then I made a door and then placed it where I dug out the original hole. We're going with the melee class for this playthrough, as it's probably the easiest because it can pierce through the worm. And essentially this whole playthrough will be affected by how good our piercing weapon is. So any weapon from the ranger class would be quite horrible, as it doesn't really pierce any enemies. And since the enemies have different segments, we can actually deal far more damage if we have piercing weapons. Anyways, I built more NPC houses and started digging myself a elevator. I got myself some ores, picked up some chests, continued digging down further, lighting my way up with a glow stick, and then I came back to the surface to chop down some trees, and then I made myself a furnace. Nearing nighttime, I went back into the caves and started searching for chests. I encountered a piranha that was in the shape of a worm, and then I went to the underground desert, but before I could get to a chest that I wanted to get to, I got killed by a boulder trap. I went back to that same area, picked up a chest, and then decided to dig down even further. This is where I got attacked by absolutely horrific nighttime enemies that were elongated beyond belief. After I battled through those, I made my way over to the corruption biome. This is where I chucked down some bombs to get myself a musket, and once I had that, I continued digging on my elevator. I got myself some life crystals, I stumbled upon a mushroom biome, I picked up some obsidian, and far more ores. I made my way over to our granite biome, which had some life crystals and a bunch of really neat chests, so I looted all of them. And once I got the summon for the Eye of Cthulhu, I came back up to the surface and summoned it in. And so this was just beyond ridiculous, as there were like a million Eyes of Cthulhu, and it summoned in so many eyeballs that I had to maneuver through. But the thing is, if we could find a piercing weapon, it was very easy to defeat. Like, for example, take me using my spear. I'm dealing tons and tons of damage, but at the same time, since I have no armor whatsoever, I just get repeatedly blasted if I get into the vicinity of the eye. I was using the musket for a bit of this boss fight, and as you can see, it's very underwhelming. Using the spear is far better, as the musket will do the same amount of damage regardless if you hit it correctly or not. Anyways, I ended up taking out the Eye of Cthulhu as it wasn't too difficult, and you know, using the musket against the Eye of Cthulhu is like dropping a nuclear bomb on an ant. And then I made my way over to try and defeat the Eater of Worlds. It had some pretty nice HP, so I thought this would be pretty easy, and using the musket and the spear, we took it out. So apparently the normal worm bosses don't get wormified like any of the other bosses, because you know, they're already worms. They do to a certain extent, but it's not very visible, and even if it is, it's like a little bit buggy where it doesn't even really change it. Anyways, we took out the Eater of Worlds. I crafted myself the Nightmare Pickaxe. I started making my way down to the underworld, but before that, I picked up a bunch of obsidian. I went down to get myself a health forge, and once the potion lady spawned in, which is the quality of life mod, I got myself an obsidian skin potion, and then I went to town on all of the hellstone within the underworld. I got myself the fiery greatsword and made my way over to Skeletron's dungeon. This is where I decided to go and fight Skeletron, and this boss fight was absolutely ridiculous. I summoned in Skeletron, and it probably took me a good 10 seconds to defeat him. The fiery greatsword absolutely shredded through every single little bit of the Skeletron's hitbox, and I demolished him, to say the least. He started getting to the phase where he was spinning, but I defeated him far earlier before he could do any decent damage to me. I made my way down into his dungeon and dug my way around. I tried to get myself the Muramasa, but it took me quite a long time to find it. There were wormy enemies non-stop, and it was an absolute hassle to try to find the massive slime worm that dropped the golden key. I think another thing that kind of hindered the spawn rates was because each worm segment counted as its own NPC, so the game couldn't spawn in more enemies like it normally does. was, which probably hindered the way the 10x spawn rate item worked. I'm not really sure. Drop that in the comments down below. What's the max entities Terraria can actually handle on screen? Because I know after a certain point it starts glitching out. Anyways, after this, I went over to the jungle in order to get enough stingers and jungle spores to get the blade of grass because, you know, I'm playing melee. It's probably the best for this entire playthrough. And once I came back to spawn, I crafted myself the blade of grass. I took out the Eye of Cthulhu once more, and then I went back into Skeletron's dungeon to farm out even more keys so I could finally get the Muramasa. I don't think there's any in between. The Muramasa you usually get on like your very first chest, or it takes you like an hour to actually find the sword. It's ridiculous, but hey, this is Terraria. What do you expect? Once I had all 4 swords, I rushed over to a demon altar and I crafted the Knight's Edge. This is where I went to the underworld, made a massive arena, and then started farming out guide voodoo demons. This also took an absolute ridiculous amount of time, but I did manage to get a guide voodoo doll quite quickly, and as soon as I got it, I chucked it into the lava, and this boss fight was absolutely hilarious. I nearly had to do no damage to the wall of flesh. I don't know why, maybe like bugged out in some way, but I chucked the doll and there were like 10 wall of flesh eyeballs in one area and they kept on doing damage to each other. I don't know how that worked, but it managed to game end itself, which was quite surprising. I literally did nothing. I was AFK and I defeated the wall of flesh, so that was pretty neat. Anyways, I broke all of the demon altars using the Ultra Extractinator, which is something from a quality of life mod I have, and then we blessed our world with adamantite, mithril, and cobalt. You know, the good ones. I actually think palladium is better than cobalt. Tell me in the comments down below. I'm not really sure, bro. I'm not good at Terraria. Anyways, I went through the pickaxe progression. I got myself, you know, cobalt pickaxe, mithril pickaxe, anvil, and then I got myself a bunch of titanium, which then I went to go craft into a full set of melee titanium armor. Then I went farming for wyverns in the sky so I can get myself harpy wings, but they were very annoying and they dealt loads of damage and the harpies were longer than the wyverns themselves. So I took massive L's there, and then I went to farming out souls of light and night within the underworld. Got myself a bunch of various souls. At this point I had already crafted the harpy wings, by the way, and then I crafted myself the repeater, and I actually got myself one of the flying knives, which was a pretty good piercing weapon that we might be able to utilize for the mechanical bosses. This was dropped by a hallowed mimic, by the way, which I ended up finding within the hallowed biome. I want to farm out more of the souls, and I managed to get myself the summon for Skeletron Prime. I got myself enough souls of night to actually just be able to craft the destroyer summon, and I also bought myself a bunch of buffs. Anyways, I spawned in the destroyer, and then using the flying knife, we absolutely obliterated this boss. I mean, there's something about the piercing of this that just shredded through the destroyer, and we took him out without any trouble whatsoever. We also used the flying knife on Skeletron Prime, and it dealt a crazy amount of damage as it was just piercing through every single segment of his head, but he was dealing quite a lot of damage to us. Like every single time he would grab us with the pinching tool or the saw, it would deal quite a lot of damage as it would hit us multiple times. It's almost like we had reduced immunity frames. Now I also summoned the twins before the end of the night, and this was just tripping me out completely as like the eyes were getting morphed into one area, and I don't even know how this worked. Also, it looked like at the very end, Spasmatism just like shot the flamethrower on himself and ended up dying because he took like no damage from me. Anyways, we took out the other twin, and now the jungle grows restless, meaning we can now go and fight Plantera. So I made myself a pickaxe axe and just scurried over to the jungle and started mining chlorophyte. What else is there to do, huh? Mine up chlorophyte, of course. Anyways, I crafted myself the summon for Plantera, and I also made myself a massive city buster, which is just like 50 dynamites combined into one. I dropped it in the jungle and it blew up an entire square of the jungle. This is where I decided to build Plantera's arena, and so as soon as that was done, I summoned her in and absolutely demolished her. Once again, using the flying knife. She kind of got glitched into one area. I don't know what happened. This mod is a little bit buggy, but it's very fun to play. But yeah, we got her stuck in one area and we defeated her. Then I went straight to Golem. I ended up clearing his entire arena, and once I spawned him in, he bugged out for some reason. I'm not really sure what happened. His head was like on multiple times, and he was actually almost about to defeat us because every single time he shot out his fist, it would literally like have no immunity frames and just breeze through me like 4 times and deal 4 times the damage of his normal fist attack. Anyways, the good news is once we actually defeated his arms, there was no head that was firing at us, which is quite odd, but we ended up defeating Golem. We got a pick saw, so I brought it over back to spawn. We also got the Golem fist, and then using that, I started defeating Golem over and over again so we could craft ourselves a bunch of beetle armor and the beetle wings. This is where I made a fatal flaw. I keep on thinking I'm still stuck in Terraria 1.3 back in my head, even though I know I'm playing 1.4, and I'm still under the belief that I always need to have turtle armor in order to craft beetle armor, as that's what the crafting recipe used to be in 1.3. So I went to the jungle and spent the rest of the time farming out out turtles non-stop until I actually crafted myself turtle armor. This took me like 30 minutes. I crafted turtle armor, then I go to craft the beetle armor, and I realized that all I needed was chlorophyte armor and beetle shells, which I already had in the beginning, making this a massive waste of time, and I kind of hate myself for this. It literally took me 30 minutes. That's 30 minutes of my entire life that I will never be able to get back due to my stupid stupidity, bro. Sounds good, huh? Stupid stupidity. I might use that more often. Anyways, after I crafted myself a full set of beetle armor and using my shoddy harpy wings, frankly, I did not craft beetle wings, I tried to my best ability to take out the lunatic cultist, and oh boy was this one rough. Especially for the fact that whenever he did his like camouflage attack thing, you couldn't ever hit him, which was really a pain because every time you don't hit him, he just summons the phantom dragon over and over again, and it's hell. That thing just destroys you. So I decided to go on the hunt to craft myself the Terra Blade. I crafted myself the True Knight's Edge, and then I realized that I didn't have an Excalibur crafted, so I crafted myself the Excalibur. I got myself the True Excalibur right after this, and then I had to wait till daytime in order to get a broken hero sword and craft the Terra Blade. Once it was daytime, I summoned in the solar eclipse and started farming out Mothrons. It took so many Mothrons for some reason for me to get the broken hero sword, but once I got it, I did manage to finally craft the Terra Blade, and we could finally go and fight the lunatic cultist. That's exactly what I did, and this time we breezed right through him. It was a joke. I got right up in his face and just swung that sword non-stop, and with the piercing capabilities of the Terra Blade and its projectiles, we absolutely demolished this guy before he can even do his cloning phase. Placed down my ancient manipulator, and then I went straight for the solar pillar, as if we took out the solar pillar first, we could have the most overpowered piercing weapon in all of Terraria, besides like the Zenith, you know, which is going to be the solar eruption, as that thing pierces through everything, even walls, might I add, but especially worm bosses. Have you ever tried to use the solar eruption on the destroyer? Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Anyways, I took out the solar pillar and I crafted myself the solar eruption. Then I went straight for the nebula pillar. After taking that out, I went straight for the vortex pillar. Upon taking that out, I decided to get myself more souls of flight by killing a bunch of wyverns, and I crafted myself a set of beetle wings, as that is going to be the wings I need to actually take out Moonlord, or else I might die. I geared up by getting as many potions as I could, got all the gear that I really needed, and I went on the hunt for the final pillar, that being the Stardust pillar. For some reason, I could deal damage to the pillar without taking out the shield. It was like really ridiculous, but the thing, like the damage didn't go down, but it says that I was dealing it. I don't really know how this game works, but I took out this pillar, and now my screen started shaking. This is where I summoned a little pet dragon, buffed up, and started brutally violating the Moonlord. I started demolishing both of his hands, and for some reason there was like a worm factor to the Moonlord where he probably had multiple hitboxes, but he didn't have like multiple projectiles, making this boss fight just stupidly easy. And what ended up happening is I would do like 10 times the damage to Moonlord without him changing whatsoever on his end. So we absolutely demolished this boss, and it was ridiculous. But yeah, this has been Terraria, but every enemy is a worm. Drop a like in the video if you enjoyed it. Consider subscribing to the channel if you're new. This has been Boyo. Peace out.